Imagine a holiday figure like Santa Claus,
Okay.
but instead of a sleigh and reindeer, he sails into town on a steamboat
Wow.
all the way from Spain.
Okay.
And his helpers, well, let's just say they're known for distributing spice cookies
Interesting.
and causing a bit of a stir.
Okay.
We're talking about Sinterklaas, a beloved Dutch tradition that's way more than just gifts and candy.
It really is fascinating. Sinterklaas is deeply woven into the fabric of Dutch culture and history, with roots going back centuries. He's a figure who evokes a sense of nostalgia, celebration, and, yes, even some controversy.
And that's what we're diving into today, all the intricate details and cultural nuances of Sinterklaas. I recently stumbled upon this awesome blog called Cole Gelson NL,
Okay.
and they have a fantastic post all about Sinterklaas 2024 in Vianen.
Cool.
It's packed with insights, and it really sparked my curiosity.
It's a great starting point for our deep dive. The blog highlights the sheer excitement surrounding Sinterklaas's arrival in Vianen, especially the grand spectacle of the Intocht van Sinterklaas on November 16th.
Right. A nationally televised event where Sinterklaas sails into town on a steamboat, greeted by cheering crowds. Talk about a festive welcome. But before we get carried away with the festivities, let's back up a bit. For those who might not be familiar, could you give us a quick rundown of who Sinterklaas is and what he represents?
Of course, Sinterklaas is essentially the Dutch version of Santa Claus, but his origins go back to St. Nicholas, a real historical figure who was known for his generosity and kindness. Over time, the legend of St. Nicholas evolved into the tradition we know today as Sinterklaas, a figure who embodies the spirit of giving and brings joy to children throughout the Netherlands.
And this isn't just a quick visit. I mean, Sinterklaas is in the Netherlands for weeks, right?
Right.
The blog mentioned a daily news program dedicated to his journey, the Sinterklaas Journal.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how kids must react to having their own Santa Claus news channel.
Oh, it's a huge deal for children. The Sinterklaas Journal follows Sinterklaas' journey from Spain to the Netherlands, reporting on his adventures, the preparations for Pakjesavond, gift-giving night, and of course any mischief caused by his helpers, the Piets.
Speaking of helpers, the blog mentioned Sinterklaas's trusty steed, Osnel. It's a charming detail, but what's even more charming is the fact that his name was changed from Amerigo just a few years ago, in 2019. I'm curious to know more about that later.
It's definitely a story worth exploring.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about the gift-giving traditions themselves. Unlike the traditional image of Santa coming down the chimney, Dutch children have a unique way of receiving their gifts from Sinterklaas.
Right. They leave their shoes out, often with treats for Osnel, hoping that Sinterklaas will fill them with biddies. It's a tradition that feels both familiar and distinctly Dutch.
It is. And it ties into the whole anticipation and excitement leading up to the main event, Pakjesavond, which is celebrated on December 5th. That's when Sinterklaas delivers the big gifts, and families gather to exchange presents and enjoy traditional treats.
It's almost like a Dutch version of Christmas Eve, but with its own set of customs and traditions. And the blog post really painted a vivid picture of how the entire country, from markets to schools, gets swept up in the Sinterklaas spirit.
Absolutely. From the moment Sinterklaas arrives, the Netherlands transforms into a festive wonderland. Markets are filled with Sinterklaas-themed treats like pepernoten, those small spice cookies you mentioned, and kruidnoten, which are similar but a bit crunchier. And then there are those iconic chocolate letters.
That's what they sound like, giant letters made entirely of chocolate,
Yeah.
usually representing the first letter of someone's name.
Yeah.
You can see why kids would love those.
Yeah.
The blog also mentioned Sinterklaas-themed toys, coloring books, and all sorts of festive decorations.
It's a true feast for the senses. And let's not forget the school celebrations. Children dress up as Sinterklaas and Piet, engage in coloring activities, and eagerly await Sinterklaas's visit to their classrooms. It's a time filled with joy, wonder, and a healthy dose of mischief, thanks to the Piets.
It all sounds incredibly charming and festive, but of course there's a layer of complexity to this tradition that we can't ignore.
Yeah.
The figure of Zwarte Piet Sinterklaas's helper.
Right.
The blog touched upon this, and it's something we need to address thoughtfully.
You're right. Zwarte Piet, often depicted with blackface makeup and exaggerated features, has become a source of significant debate in the Netherlands. While some view him as a harmless traditional figure, others see him as a symbol of racism and colonial legacy.
It's a sensitive topic, and we'll delve into the nuances of the Zwarte Piet controversy in more detail later in the episode. But for now, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is a tradition with layers of history, meaning, and evolving perspectives.
It's a topic that demands careful consideration, especially given the ongoing dialogue within Dutch society about the portrayal of Zwarte Piet. It's not about erasing history or condemning tradition,
Right.
but rather about understanding how cultural perceptions evolve over time and recognizing the importance of inclusivity.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The blog post did a good job of highlighting the different perspectives on Zwarte Piet,
Hmm.
pointing out that some see it as harmless fun with no ill intent, while others find it deeply offensive and hurtful.
Exactly. And that's the crux of the issue. What might have been considered acceptable decades ago is now being viewed through a different lens,
Right.
one that's more sensitive to issues of race representation and cultural appropriation.
So it's not just about the intention behind the tradition, but also about the impact it has on different communities.
Precisely. And for many, particularly those from communities that have historically faced discrimination and prejudice, the portrayal of Zwarte Piet perpetuates harmful stereotypes and reinforces feelings of exclusion.
I can see how that would be deeply upsetting and problematic. The blog post also mentioned that this debate has actually led to some changes in how Zwarte Piet is portrayed, at least in some celebrations.
That's right. There's a growing movement to make the celebration more inclusive, and you're seeing some adaptations to the traditional image of Zwarte Piet. For example, some celebrations feature Piets with soot smudges instead of full blackface makeup, symbolizing the idea that they got dirty from going down chimneys to deliver presents.
So it's a way of trying to retain the helper character and the festive spirit while moving away from the more overtly racist depictions.
Exactly. And you're also seeing more diverse representations of Pete's with different hairstyles, costumes, and even skin tones reflecting a broader range of cultural backgrounds. It's a way of acknowledging the need for inclusivity and ensuring that everyone feels represented and welcome in the celebration.
It sounds like there's a genuine effort to evolve the tradition and find a balance between respecting cultural heritage and promoting inclusivity.
That's the hope. Of course, the conversation is still ongoing, and there are differing opinions on how best to address these concerns.
Sure.
But the fact that there is a dialogue happening is encouraging. It shows that people are willing to engage with these complex issues and work towards creating a more inclusive society.
And that's what's so fascinating about delving into these cultural traditions. We're not just talking about festive celebrations.
Right.
We're talking about reflections of societal values, historical legacies, and the ongoing process of cultural change.
You hit the nail on the head. Traditions are not static. They evolve over time, reflecting the changing dynamics of society. And the conversation around Zwarte Piet is a perfect example of how cultural awareness and sensitivity are essential to ensuring that traditions remain relevant and inclusive for everyone.
It's a reminder that we can appreciate and celebrate cultural heritage while also being critical and thoughtful about the messages we're sending and the impact they have.
Well said. It's a delicate balance, but one that's worth striving for. And as we continue to explore the world of Sinterklaas, I think it's important to keep this broader context in mind.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the charm and festivity of Sinterklaas, but we must also acknowledge the complexities and the ongoing dialogue surrounding certain aspects of the tradition.
It's those complexities that make it so fascinating, don't you think?
I completely agree. It's a reminder that culture is constantly evolving, and traditions are not immune to change. And speaking of change, I'm curious to go back to Ozosnel Sinterklaas's horse. What was the story behind his name change from Amerigo?
Ah, yes. That was quite a development. The name change took place in 2019 amidst ongoing discussions about cultural sensitivity and representation.
Okay.
Some felt that the name Amerigo, which alluded to Amerigo Vespucci, the Italian explorer, didn't quite fit with the Dutch spirit of the Sinterklaas tradition.
So they opted for a more Dutch-sounding name, Ozosnel, which translates to super fast. Yeah. It's a cute and fitting name considering the horse's role in the Sinterklaas legend.
It is, and it highlights how even seemingly small details within a tradition can be subject to change and reinterpretation as cultural awareness grows.
The blog post mentioned that Sinterklaas is a big deal in Dutch schools. Can you tell us more about how the celebration plays out in the educational setting?
Oh, absolutely. Dutch schools go all out for Sinterklaas. It's a time for crafts, songs, storytelling, and of course plenty of pepernoten and kruidnoten.
I can only imagine the sugar rush. But seriously, it sounds like a fun and engaging way to introduce children to the cultural significance of Sinterklaas.
It is. Children often make drawings and paintings of Sinterklaas, and his helpers learn songs about his journey and even write letters to him expressing their wishes.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's the anticipation of Sinterklaas visiting their classroom, a moment that's sure to create lasting memories.
It sounds almost magical. And it's a great example of how cultural traditions are passed down through generations, ensuring their continued relevance and significance.
Exactly. It's through these shared experiences, stories, and celebrations that cultural identity is shaped and strengthened.
And speaking of shared experiences, The blog post highlighted the vibrant atmosphere of Dutch markets during the Sinterklaas season. It's not just about buying gifts, it's about experiencing the sights, smells, and sounds of a truly festive occasion.
Oh, absolutely. Dutch markets are transformed into a Sinterklaas wonderland. You'll find stalls selling all sorts of Sinterklaas-themed goods, from traditional treats like pepernoten and kruidnoten to elaborate chocolate letters and marzipan figurines.
The blog post even mentioned that some vendors hide pepernoten in their hoods and playfully toss them to children, adding to the overall sense of fun and excitement.
It's a delightful tradition that brings a touch of whimsy to the celebration.
Right.
And let's not forget the aroma of freshly baked goods wafting through the air, the twinkling lights adorning the stalls, and the joyous chatter of families and friends.
It's a sensory experience that truly captures the spirit of Sinterklaas.
Indeed. It's a testament to how cultural celebrations can bring communities together, creating shared memories and strengthening bonds.
And it's a reminder that sometimes it's the small details, the playful interactions, the sensory delights, the shared stories that make a tradition truly special.
Well said. Those small details often hold the most profound meaning.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the origins, traditions, complexities, and evolution of Sinterklaas. It's been a fascinating journey into a unique cultural celebration.
It really has. And what I find particularly compelling is how this seemingly simple holiday tradition reflects broader societal values and prompts us to consider issues of inclusivity, cultural sensitivity, and the ever-evolving nature of tradition itself.
I couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that even the most cherished traditions can benefit from critical reflection and adaptation to ensure they remain relevant and inclusive for everyone. It's amazing how a single holiday tradition can spark such a multifaceted conversation.
It really speaks to the power of culture and the importance of engaging with traditions thoughtfully and critically.
I'm so glad we took this deep dive into Sinterklaas. It's not just about the festivities.
Right.
It's about understanding a culture's values, history, and how those elements are constantly evolving.
Exactly. And for anyone listening who's intrigued by Dutch culture, I highly recommend checking out the Collé Gelsen NL blog. Their post on Sinterklaas 2024 in Vianen was our inspiration for this episode, and they have a wealth of other fascinating articles about life and culture in the Netherlands.
It's a fantastic resource, and we'll definitely link to it in the show notes. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Yep.
The idea that traditions aren't static. They change and adapt over time. What do you think the evolution of Sinterklaas, particularly the discussions around Zwarte Piet, tell us about the importance of cultural awareness?
That's such a crucial question. I think it highlights the need for constant reflection and a willingness to engage with diverse perspectives. As societies evolve, so too should our understanding of what's appropriate, respectful, and inclusive.
So it's not about clinging to tradition for tradition's sake, but rather about recognizing that traditions can and should reflect the evolving values of a society.
Precisely. And it's about being sensitive to the experiences of others, especially those from marginalized communities who might experience traditions differently than we do.
It's a powerful reminder that cultural awareness is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
Well said. It requires us to be open to learning to challenge our own assumptions and to embrace the richness and diversity of human experiences.
This deep dive into Sinterklaas has been truly enlightening. It's given us a glimpse into a unique cultural tradition and sparked some important conversations about history representation and the evolving nature of culture itself.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a pleasure exploring these nuances with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it as engaging and insightful as we did. If you have any thoughts or personal experiences related to Sinterklaas or Dutch culture, we'd love to hear from you in the comments.
And don't forget to check out the Collé Gelsen NL blog for more fascinating insights into Dutch life and culture.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those deep dives going.